In the quietest corners of the soul, far from the noise of material temples, there exists a living church, one that cannot be seen with the eyes or touched with the hands, a church not built of stone, but formed of pure consciousness. This is the invisibilized church, the eternal sanctuary of the Spirit, where every human being, without exception, may enter freely. No credentials, no hierarchies, no dogmas that imprison truth. At its sacred altar, no ritual mass is performed. Instead, there is the inner mass, a direct communion between the soul and the divine, a secret ceremony where thought becomes prayer and faith becomes creative energy. Inspired by the revelations of the spiritual visionary Emmet Fox, this text is a journey to the mystical core of your being, a guide to rediscover the true church that vibrates in the silence of love, in the peace that surpasses all understanding, in the unshakable knowing that God dwells within you. There are no sermons here, only awakening, no penance, only transformation, no separation, only sacred unity. Prepare to cross the invisible threshold, let go of appearances, strip your soul of all you've been taught, and enter the purest, most powerful, and most forgotten celebration, the inner Mass. Welcome to the invisibilized church. The true liturgy begins now. Every great spiritual work begins in silence, not with noise, not with announcement, not with demonstration. It begins in the invisible, the internal, the hidden. This is how Christ was conceived, not in a visible temple, nor a palace, nor a public square, but in the silent womb of a willing woman. There was no thunder of trumpets. No dogma was proclaimed. There was only a simple, "Let it be to me according to your word." Luke 1:38. And the eternal word began to take form. So too does this book begin. This introduction is not an exposition. It is a conception. It is not a mental explanation, but an inner opening for those who know that God does not enter through the senses, but through surrender. If you have taken this book in your hands, if you have paused to open it, if you have not let go after reading the first lines, it is because something within you, deeper than thought, older than your history, more real than your personality, has remembered that the temple of God is not made by human hands, but by awakened consciousness. And that temple is you. This is not a metaphor to decorate an idea. It is a reality that transforms every fiber of your being when understood. It is no longer the time for doctrines, nor the hour for empty repetitions. This is the moment when mature souls, advanced minds, and alert spirits must consciously begin to inhabit what they already are, living temples of the eternal God. This book is not a work to be grasped all at once. It is a journey, an inward pilgrimage, a liturgy without religion, a mass without a physical altar. Each chapter is a room. Each room is a dimension of your own consciousness. Every word has been placed to help you remember what God has never forgotten, that you are His dwelling place. Do not read hastily. Do not search for external symbols. Do not try to apply concepts. Prepare yourself like Mary, not knowing everything, but knowing that the all is within you. And then, with that silent yes, the word will become flesh once again, but this time, in you, the invisible church based on the teachings of Emmet Fox. We have noticed that over 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to keep creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1, The Narrow Gate, Crossing the Threshold of Consciousness. How does one enter the inner temple, the renunciation of external religion, the first step toward truth? No one can show you the entrance. No one can open the door for you from the outside. No one can cross it on your behalf. The narrow gate that Christ spoke of is not at the end of a path, but at the beginning of true consciousness. It is not a destination, but a threshold. It does not lead to a physical church or an external spiritual movement. It leads to the hidden temple within you, and to find it you must close your eyes to the world, stop searching on foreign altars, silence the voices that tell you how to find God, and listen to the voice that has always been within you. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. Matthew 7:13. This teaching is not a threat, but a spiritual map. The wide gate is the religion of the world, popular, accepted, comfortable, the one that offers external security, rewards and hells, human mediators, material temples, and soulless rituals, the one that repeats formulas, memorizes texts, and worships a separate, jealous, and distant God. That gate does not lead to the kingdom, it leads to the perpetuation of ignorance disguised as faith. But the narrow gate, that one cannot be seen with the eyes of the body, it is not made of wood or stone, it is made of renunciation. Renunciation of all you thought you knew about God. Renunciation of all they told you you must be. Renunciation of any belief that says God is there and you are here. To cross it, you do not need doctrine, lineage, or history. You only need inner honesty. The soul that stops to look within with radical humility and hunger for truth has already found the doorknob. You cannot carry anything with you through it, neither your image, nor your titles, nor even your religious ideas, because on the other side of this door there is no religion. There is presence, silence, eternity without form, and if what you seek is belonging, external identity, or group validation, you are not ready yet. Christ does not seek believers. He seeks walkers, those who dare to leave the noise and enter the nameless temple. At the foot of the narrow gate there are no crowds. There is silence. The world continues shouting behind. Cathedrals still ring bells. Processions still march. Preaching still fills spaces with words. But the soul that has glimpsed the entrance can no longer hear the same way, because it has felt, even if only for an instant, that true communion is not with doctrine, but with the God who dwells at its center. Crossing this gate is not a physical act, it is an inner turn. It is ceasing to ask what my church says and beginning to ask what the silence within me says. It is stopping the search for approval from religious authorities and starting to obey the light that guides you, even when you cannot explain it. It is ceasing to worship the crucified Christ in images and beginning to listen to the living Christ who calls you from within. It is ceasing to repeat, Lord, Lord, and beginning to do the will that is not written in stone, but engraved on your conscience when aligned with truth. But be careful. The narrow gate is not exclusivity, not spiritual elitism, not disguised superiority. It is pure humility. Because to enter, you must accept that you do not know, that what you have learned is no longer enough, that the path is not outside, that no one can give you what only you can remember. And that is the condition for the true spiritual journey. You cannot enter the temple with pride, only with inner nakedness. Once inside, you will see no benches or altars, no stained glass or icons. What you will see is your own mind reflected. What you will feel is the echo of your oldest thoughts. What you will hear is the word speaking, not from a cloud, but from your center. Because the temple is you, and every corner you explore will be a chamber of your soul. But before continuing the journey, you must stop here at the entrance, at the threshold. For those who cross without awareness, who cross in haste, who seek to skip stages, have not truly entered. And this book is not written for those who want to decorate their spirituality. It is written for those who have let go of dogma and dared to say, even through tears, I no longer want religion, I want God. And God answers, here I have always been in you, you only needed to enter. Are you ready? The portal is open, the temple awaits, the soul remembers, and you have already crossed the door. Chapter 2. The central nave, walking among the pillars of thought. The mental structure of the soul, the great sustaining principles, truth, life, love, spirit. You have crossed the threshold. You are no longer outside, where the echo of creeds resounds without understanding. You are inside the temple, and it is not a temple of stone, but the living structure of your own consciousness. This enclosed space has no roof, because its vault is the sky of your awakened mind. It has no walls, because its limits are those you yourself have upheld with conditioned thought. But it does have columns, invisible pillars that hold up the soul. Here you stand in the central nave of your being. You cannot move forward without looking at these columns. You cannot walk this space without recognizing the principles that keep it standing. If your thought does not align with them, the temple becomes ruins, an echo, an empty form. But if you accept them, affirm them, and live them, then the temple vibrates, breathes, and fills with light. These pillars were not invented, they were not revealed by a book. They are eternal. They are truth, life, love, and spirit. Not ideas, not emotions, not beliefs, but presences, laws, foundations. First, truth. The whole temple is oriented toward it. Without truth, there is no sanctuary. Truth is not opinion, nor interpretation, nor doctrine. It is what is beyond what you think, feel, or believe. It does not change with time. It does not depend on your approval. It does not need you to defend it. It only needs you to align with it. When you think with truth, the inner structure of your consciousness straightens, error dissolves, fear fades, the mind becomes clear, or you cannot deceive yourself and dwell in this temple. You cannot repeat sacred words while denying truth with your acts, your thoughts, or your judgments. The first pillar asks for integrity. Then comes life. Not biological, not chronological, not nervous life, but life that flows without form, without time, without death. The life that is God Himself breathing in every atom of your being. When you come into contact with this pillar, everything inside you begins to move, heal, and renew. Life lifts you from the state of existence to the state of being. It does not limit you, it expands you. It does not need justification, it only needs to be allowed. If religion taught you to fear God as a giver of punishments, this pillar corrects you. God is life, and you are His living expression. Next, love, not human affection, not desire, not nostalgia, but the unconditional force that unites all, without exception. Love that does not judge, that does not remember wrongs, that demands no merit. Love that holds the galaxies and every cell of your body. When you walk near this pillar, you understand that you cannot love God and hate your brother, that you cannot worship without forgiveness, that you cannot serve the Spirit while harboring hidden resentments. Love is not an ornament of the temple. It is its heart. It is the energy that makes everything else real. It is the only law, the only commandment that contains all others. And finally, Spirit, not as a ghost, not as an idea, not as comfort, but as the invisible substance that fills everything. Spirit is the air of the temple. It is what gives life to the Word. It is what moves, connects, reveals. You do not see it, you do not touch it, but when you enter its field, you know you are home. Spirit does not submit to structures, does not obey dogmas, does not fit into creeds. It blows where it wills, it dwells within you. It is presence. Spirit does not belong to you, but you belong to it. These four pillars are not separate, they are one with many faces. If you live in truth, you live in life. If you live in life, you flow in love. If you flow in love, you breathe in Spirit. And if you breathe in Spirit, you are temple. You do not enter the temple, you become temple. Now stop. Look around, not with the eyes of the body, but with those of the soul. Each pillar is within you. Each principle is waiting for you to affirm it in thought, word, and deed. Here, in this central nave, prayers are not repeated. Consciousness is breathed. A distant God is not celebrated. The God that is being you now is recognized. You are temple, you are altar, you are clergy, you are liturgy. And this is the first true Mass. When thought becomes truth, the body becomes life, the heart becomes love, and the soul surrenders to Spirit. You do not need to move, just remain here. The steps will come, the chambers will open, but if these pillars are not firm, the rest will be decorated illusion. You have arrived at the central nave, and you can no longer leave unchanged. Chapter 3. The silent choir where the wordless voice resounds, the purified emotional center. The inner music, harmony as living liturgy. No temple is complete without its choir. But in this one you walk, the temple of your consciousness, you will find no sheet music, no human voices, no physical chords. You will find something higher, more subtle, more true, the pure vibration of the soul purified by truth. Here, singing is not with the voice, but with the frequency of elevated thought. Here there are no repeated notes or melodies. Here you hear the living music of the Spirit, a harmony that does not enter through the ears, but emerges from the heart when it has been cleansed. This is the silent choir. You cannot enter this chamber with disturbed emotions. You cannot come with complaints, guilt, or resentments disguised as justice. This room only opens to those who have decided to transmute all pain into understanding, all past into presence, and all human emotion into divine energy. The emotional center must be purified, not suppressed, not denied, but carried into the fire of impersonal love until every inner song is formless praise. You have walked among the pillars. You have recognized truth as foundation, life as substance, love as law, spirit as atmosphere. Now the temple leads you deeper into harmony, because the true is not only to be thought, it must be felt. And feeling is not reacting, it is vibrating with the Christ within you. To feel in this temple is to allow presence to express itself through your sensitivity without owning it. It is to stop being a victim of emotions and become their priest. The silent choir does not sing to entertain, it sings to uplift. And its music is made of forgiveness, acceptance, effortless compassion. Each time you think with tenderness, the choir sings. Each time you transform a dark emotion into understanding, the choir tunes itself. Each time you bless instead of judge, an invisible note resonates on high. You do not hear with the senses, but if you stop now, breathe, and enter your center, you will feel the healing vibration of impersonal love. That is the music of the temple. Harmony is the true liturgy. There is no higher rite than a mind and heart aligned. External religion has confused worship with spectacle, but in this temple, to worship is to synchronize. There is no altar without inner rhythm. There is no mass without musical silence. And that silence is cultivated every time you abandon drama, every time you stop telling your story, every time you surrender without complaint, every time you let go of the need to be right and choose peace. Because disorderly emotion is noise, but sublimated emotion is song. And the song of the harmonized soul is what sustains presence. Now understand this. You cannot dwell in this temple if your heart is divided. You cannot think of God and nurture hatred. You cannot affirm truth and hold grudges. You cannot be temple and battlefield at once. You must choose, and if you choose, you must purify. Every emotion must pass through the fire. Every old story must be transformed into a psalm. Wounded memory must be turned into wisdom. Loss into seed, rage into constructive energy, fear into openness, human love into unconditional love. When you do this, when you live this, when you hold this, the choir will sing within you without ceasing. You will not hear with your ears, but you will know that all within you vibrates in unity. And those who come near you will feel that music, even if they cannot name it. You have entered a sacred chamber. Do not leave it. Stay there, even if the world screams outside, because here, in this space without sound, is the eternal song that only those who no longer need words to say, I am, can sing. That is the song of the Christ within you. Chapter 4, the candles on the altar, lighting the light in the midst of the world, the awakening of intuition. Each flame a revealed truth, the illumination of the inner senses. There is a point in every temple where the soul pauses to surrender. It is not a ritual gesture, not learned reverence. It is something deeper, the awareness that it stands before the living mystery. Here in this inner temple you are walking through, that point is the altar. It is not an object, not a table, not a place reached by walking. It is a state of the soul when it stops searching outside and begins to ignite from within. And on that altar, the only things that shine are candles. Candles lit by the Spirit. Candles that do not shine from the world, but toward the world. Each candle is an awakened intuition, each flame a truth revealed. Each flicker an inner sense that has begun to see what the eyes do not see, to hear what the noise will not let be heard, to feel what the heart has not yet understood. Because the altar of the inner temple is not made to ask, it is made to reveal. External religion has taught to place intentions on an external altar. Here, instead, it is the altar that places intentions within you. It is not you who offers light. It is the light that offers you understanding. Every time one of these candles lights up, something is understood without explanation, something is ordered without logic, something is revealed without words. And then your entire inner temple, your body, your mind, your history, your world, is illuminated from a flame that never goes out. But for the candle to light, you must be willing to stop thinking as you think, willing to dissolve the fog of others' ideas, willing to receive without controlling, to see without defining, to accept without immediate understanding. Because intuition is not what the world calls the sixth sense. Intuition is the pure vision of the soul that no longer interprets, it contemplates. Christ did not speak from reasoning, he spoke from direct intuition. I do nothing on my own, he said, as the Father taught me. John 8:28. He did not learn from books, though he knew them. He did not repeat formulas, though he quoted Scripture. He spoke what he saw. He said what the Father said in him. His altar was lit from within. In your temple, those candles represent the awakening of your spiritual senses. Not your physical eyes, but the eye of the soul. Not your bodily ears, but the inner ear that recognizes the voice of silence. Not the touch of the skin, but the vibrant touch of presence. Not the taste of the tongue, but the flavor of the eternal. Not human smell, but the fragrance of the Spirit. When these senses awaken, you begin to see God in everything without naming him, to feel God without explanation, to know what cannot be taught, to love without cause. And then you light a candle in the middle of the world, not to show it, not to preach, not to convince, but simply because you are lit. The world doesn't need more words. It needs living temples with candles burning, men and women ablaze in silent understanding, who look and transform, who pass by and uplift, who are altar in the market, in the street, at work, at home, who don't need to say, "I believe," because their very presence is already light. The altar of the temple is not for guarding mystery, it is for pouring out revelation. Every time you stop within yourself and enter silence without questions, a flame lights, and when you do this consistently, the light does not stay inside. It passes through your eyes, your skin, your voice, your walk, and one day you will understand without knowing why that you yourself are candle, altar, and fire, that your very existence is a burning prayer. And those who look at you without knowing why will feel closer to God, not because of what you say, not because of what you do, but because the Christ within you has lit the altar, and your soul sings, even if it does not utter a single note. Chapter 5, the empty confessional. Redemption without guilt or punishment. The dissolution of sin as illusion. Forgiveness from Christ, not from fear. The inner judgment transformed. As you move through the invisible temple of your consciousness, you arrive at a room long feared for centuries. It is narrow, silent, and seems to whisper secrets no one dares to speak aloud. Here the soul has bowed for generations, not to redeem itself, but to repeat its sentence. Here lips murmured lists of mistakes. Here guilt was sanctified. Here fear dressed itself in religion. But now, entering with awakened awareness, you discover the confessional is empty. No shadow listens. No figure imposes penance. No judge sits behind the grill. There is only you and the silence, you and your inner Christ. And then you understand. The one who was supposed to forgive you was never God. It was always you. Here occurs one of the deepest transformations of the previous temple, the dissolution of sin as reality. It is not about denying error, but about denying its eternity. It is not about justifying wrongdoing, but understanding its cause. It is not about begging forgiveness, but accepting forgiveness as the soul's natural state in God. Jesus did not come to reinforce punishment. He came to dissolve judgment. He did not condemn the adulteress nor fear the leper. He did not avoid the tax collector. He did not demand sacrifices. He did not impose penance. He only said, "Your sins are forgiven, go and sin no more." But not because sin was a stain, because it was an illusion, upheld by a mind that had yet to remember its holiness. Error at its root is forgetfulness. Evil in its essence is unconsciousness. True forgiveness is not a moral act, it is an act of awakening. You cannot receive true forgiveness if you believe you are unworthy. You cannot give true forgiveness if you believe the other is guilty. Because in the temple of Christ, there is no place for victims or executioners. There are only children of God remembering step by step who they really are. The empty confessional shows you this, that no one can absolve you because you were created free. No institution can tell you that you are clean because you were never stained. No penance can buy your peace because peace is not bought. It is remembered. But to remember, you must let go. Let go of the voice that accuses you. Let go of the face that judges you. Let go of the story you repeat. Let go of the guilt you cradle. Let go of the shame you call humility. Let go of the need to feel bad to believe you are stopping, because the only currency of the soul is truth. And truth says, "I do not condemn you." John 8:1. Truth does not negotiate, does not punish, does not reward, it simply is. And in its light, all judgment disappears. Here, in this room of the temple, you do not come to kneel before a judge. You come to release the condemnation you yourself have held. You come to recognize that the only judgment weighing on you was the one you created. And now you can let it go, like shedding an old robe that no longer fits. The soul is not stained by falling. It is clouded when it forgets. And Christ does not come down to punish you. He comes down to remind you of what has never ceased to be true, that you are holy. Now breathe and feel the silence of the empty confessional. There is no punishment, no penance, no judge. Only presence, only peace, only a love so vast it does not wait for you to change before embracing you. It only waits for you to recognize that you are already embraced. That recognition is forgiveness. Not an act, not an event, not an emotion, but an eternal state activated when the soul surrenders to Christ and says, "I no longer need to carry what has already been dissolved in the light." Then you leave this room not as someone who has been forgiven, but as someone who has remembered they were never separated. Chapter 6. Holy water, the purification of the mental image, the cleansing of the subconscious. Spiritual baptism, the soul remembering it is already pure. There is a vessel at the entrance of every visible temple, a simple bowl filled with water where the faithful dip their fingers to trace a sacred symbol upon themselves. They call it holy water. They touch it without thinking, they do it without knowing. They repeat the gesture without understanding its deep truth, because what this rite was meant to signify is not a custom or superstition. It is a spiritual law, written in the form of a need to purify the mental image before crossing into the sacred. You do not enter this temple, the temple of your consciousness, with contaminated thoughts. You do not ascend in understanding, dragging inherited concepts. You do not see Christ if you continue to look at the world through the distortion of fear. And so at this point of the journey, the soul is called to baptize itself internally, not with visible water, but with the living substance of redeemed thought. Because the true holy water is not in the bowl, but in the mind when it becomes clear. To baptize oneself in this temple is not to get wet, it is to remember. It is to let fall upon the subconscious the silent rain of truth. It is to allow conditioned thought, shaped by history, culture, pain, and habit, to be gently, firmly, and luminously dissolved. The subconscious, that hidden part of you that directs so much without your knowing, has been molded with false images. Images of separation, effort, unworthiness, inherited guilt, deserved punishment, a distant, watchful, and fickle God, and all of that was imprinted, and as long as it remains there, no matter how much truth you affirm, the mental image will continue to cast shadows. That is why holy water is necessary, not to obtain something new, but to reveal the eternal, to clean the mirror, so you can see yourself as God sees you, not as a believer, not as a sinner, not as a seeker, but as a child, a channel, a reflection. When the soul immerses in this water, nothing is added to it. Everything that is not its own is removed, everything the world placed, everything religion sealed, everything fear tattooed deep within, and it is laid bare, not in shame, but in holiness. The purified soul is not one that feels perfect. It is one that has let go of judgment. It is one that has renounced the story. It is one that has understood that the only truth about itself is the one God holds, and no other. And that recognition is baptism. Here there are no godparents, no ceremony, no new name. There is only a renewed awareness that, when looking at its own face in the water, sees Christ, and when looking at the world, sees reflections of that same Christ, though disguised, though asleep, though still wounded. This water does not cleanse the soul. Remember, soul, that you were never dirty. It cleanses the mind. It cleanses the eyes with which you see. It cleanses the thoughts with which you interpret. It cleanses the faith that had become fear. It cleanses the love that had become attachment. It cleanses the prayer that had become supplication. It cleanses your inner voice until you hear deep within, "You are my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." Matthew 3:17. Not because you changed, but because now you can hear it. That is the miracle of holy water in the inner temple. It does not act, it unveils. It does not transform, it reveals. It does not purify something impure, it simply removes the veil. And when you leave this room, you do not feel better. You feel real, light, clear, present, because you no longer carry the image imposed on you. You carry the image God has held from the beginning, and that image does not weigh, it radiates. Chapter 7, the sacristy, mental preparation to serve the Spirit, where the temple servants dress, the place of intention, the mind clothed in truth. Every true spiritual work begins in the invisible. No action, no matter how lofty it may seem, has power if it hasn't been prepared in the mind. No service is sacred if it arises from the desire for recognition, the need for compensation, or an undirected emotional impulse. The inner temple admits no improvisations. You do not enter the altar with a distracted mind or unfiltered thoughts. That is why in this closed architecture of consciousness, there is a hidden and silent space where only a soul with purpose can enter. The sacristy. The sacristy is not a place for spectacle, not a space for display. It is not where the world is spoken to, but where the inner world is put in order. Here preaching gives way to preparation, acting to alignment. Here the soul pauses before acting to dress itself in the right intention. The mistake of many has been to begin serving before being ready to serve. They have spoken of God without thinking like God. They have tried to heal without first healing themselves. They have wanted to be instruments of the Spirit, but their minds were still occupied by judgment, haste, or spiritual ego disguised as vocation. And every work born this way is born undressed. No matter how noble it seems, It does not carry the inner garment of Christ. The sacristy of the inner temple is the place where the mind is clothed, not with symbols, not with external habits, not with sacred formulas, but with conscious truth. Here thought is examined, purified, and directed. Here the soul about to serve remembers it is not she who acts, but the Spirit through her. Here all personal agendas, desires for reward, and expectations are set aside, and only one thing is affirmed. Let it be done to me according to your word. Luke 1:38. This affirmation is not a poetic phrase, and it is the essential disposition of one who understands that only when the mind has been clothed by the Spirit is service true. To serve from Christ is not to act with emotion, nor to offer time as penance, nor to speak from what is learned. To serve from Christ is to allow the principle to express itself through your instrument without interference. And for that to be possible, your instrument must be tuned, clean, aligned. That is why this room is fundamental, because the soul that does not pass through here will serve from ego, from urgency to redeem itself, from the need to belong or prove something. And all that may seem spiritual, but it is not. The Spirit is not moved by anxiety. It does not manifest out of obligation. It manifests where there is mental order, clarity of intention, and loving obedience. In the sacristy, preparation is not physical, it is metaphysical. Here eternal ideas are affirmed. Here a clearing treatment removes the remnants of the world. Here silences are spoken that are worth more than speeches. Here the consciousness is cleansed of all expectation, so that service is not a means, but an end in itself. You do not come here to ask for the work to turn out well. You come to affirm that the work is already done in the Spirit, and you have only come to express it. Dressing in this room is a mental action, dressing in patience, in meekness which is not weakness but mastery, in serene joy that does not depend on results, in certainty that cannot be explained but sustains, and above all in true humility, one that does not diminish but recognizes that all power comes from above. When you are dressed this way, your action becomes sacrament. No one sees this preparation. No one applauds this labor, but it is here that everything begins. A soul that has not prepared itself in the sacristy of its inner temple may impress outwardly, but it does not transform. Its words resonate, but they do not penetrate. Its work multiplies, but it does not build, because the Spirit does not bless haste disguised as devotion. It blesses the preserved mind, the one that has passed through the altar of silence, the one clothed with the right intention. You cannot serve Christ if your thought still opposes Christ. You cannot be a channel if your mind is full of interference. You cannot be a messenger if you have not first become a listener. And here in this silent room, without witnesses, without an audience, without external rituals, you become that listener of the Spirit, not to repeat what you hear, but so that the ear becomes life, action, embodied substance. Not everyone reaches this room. Many rush straight to the pulpit, others seek the altar without preparation, but you have understood that without the sacristy, the temple cannot stand. Not because the Spirit needs conditions, but because you need to understand that the right way to serve is to surrender, not as a servant, but as a pure channel, not as a slave, but as a child who has remembered that their role is not to shine, but to reflect. Now you are ready, not because you deserve it, not because a role was granted to you, but because you have clothed your thought with truth. And that is all the Spirit needs to manifest. Chapter 8. The inner pulpit, hearing the voice of Christ within you, the preaching of the soul, the inner master as the only speaker, the silent teaching. In every visible temple there is a place from which the voice is raised. It is the pulpit, elevated, prominent, directed toward those who listen. From there doctrines are taught, scriptures explained, homilies delivered, exhortations given, interpretations offered, guidance shared. But in the inner temple you walk step by step. That pulpit is not in front of others, neither in sight nor in external height. It is in the heart of your consciousness, and from there no visible priest speaks. The eternal Master speaks. Christ speaks within you. And when he speaks, he needs no volume, only silence. The inner pulpit is not a place from which you speak to others. It is the space where God speaks to you, not with new phrases, not with commanding mandates, not with dramatic visions. He speaks with inner clarity, with certainty that cannot be reasoned, with understanding that cannot be explained, with an authority that does not come from this world, but leaves no doubt. The voice of Christ does not argue, does not repeat, does not persuade. It affirms, and its tone is unlike any other you have heard, because it does not speak to your ear. It speaks to your being. Many have sought external voices, masters, preachers, books, rituals, signs, and all of that can be useful if it leads to silence. But when it becomes dependence, when it turns into noise that would now invade the inner, the purpose is lost. You are not here to follow someone else's voices. You are here to recognize the voice of Christ within you. That voice is not reserved for saints, the chosen, or the initiated. It is available to anyone who has cleansed their altar, lit their candles, purified their mental image, and clothed their intention. In other words, to anyone who has made space in their consciousness to listen, to truly listen, because hearing Christ is not hearing phrases. It is understanding from another level. It is receiving not only what you must do, but who you are, what you are, why you exist, and how to live without separation. When that voice becomes present, and it always is present, you no longer need external guidance. Not because you are self-sufficient, but because you are aligned. And alignment is direction, it is peace, it is charity. On this pulpit there is no spectacle, no drama, no spiritual show. There is direct teaching. The preaching of the soul is not done before crowds. It happens in secret, in the hidden place of being, in the chamber where only you and the Spirit dwell. And from there, every word you hear in the silence becomes another stone in the temple you are building. It is not information, it is edification. It is not mental instruction, it is spiritual construction. Because when Christ speaks, the structure of your consciousness changes, not as one who learns, but as one who remembers. The voice does not always say what you expect. Sometimes it silences you. Sometimes it confronts you. Sometimes it stops you. Sometimes it reveals that what you have held as truth was only fear adorned. And then, if you are willing, something falls, something collapses, something empties, not to destroy you, but to expand you, to give you an understanding that will not be lost, a certainty that does not depend on emotions, a faith that needs no defenses. That is true teaching, not what you acquire, but what becomes you. And once you have heard that voice, even once, you can never be the same. You can no longer repeat formulas. You can no longer speak from spiritual ego. You can no longer fake wisdom, because Christ within you has already spoken. And when Christ speaks, the soul falls into worshipful silence, not because of fear, but because all has been said and nothing remains but to live it. That is why this pulpit is not designed to preach to the world. It is designed so that you are preached by God. And afterwards, if you must speak, if you must serve, if you must communicate, you will not do it from yourself. You will do it from the voice that first spoke within you. And then your teaching will not be information. It will be transmission. It will not be yours, it will be the Spirit's through you. And it will not matter if you speak with words or with silence, because when Christ teaches, every act becomes a sermon. You have arrived at this room. You have passed through the previous ones, not to learn more, but to make space for the true voice. Now listen, not with anxiety, not with expectation, just listen and the voice will speak. Not because you deserve it, not because you force it, but because it has always been there. You only needed to be silent. Chapter 9, The Mental Way of the Cross. Each station is a redeemed thought. The soul's journey dying to the ego. The cross is a symbol of surrender, not pain. Each step a liberation. There is no symbol more present, more repeated, more revered in the external temple than the cross. It stands atop domes, in stained glass windows, in hands on walls, over the chests of the faithful, and on every altar of ritual. Yet very few understand its true meaning, because the cross is not an instrument of punishment, nor a reminder of guilt, nor an object of superstitious worship. The cross in the temple of consciousness is an inner structure of liberation. It does not represent perpetual suffering, but absolute surrender. It is not a symbol of punishment, but of yielding. And when the soul looks upon it from truth, it stops mourning what it thinks it has lost and begins to release all that it no longer needs. This is the deep meaning of the way of the cross. It is not a parade of pain, it is an inner journey. Each station is not a historical event, but a thought that must die so Christ may live. Each step is not a pious remembrance, but an act of awareness, where the ego loosens its grip until it is empty, until nothing of it remains and all is God. Only those who have begun to die to the personal self understand the true power of this path, because there is no resurrection without surrender, no ascent without voluntary descent. The depths of the being where the ego still resists. The first station is not external, it is mental. It begins when the soul says, "I am willing to let go of my way of thinking." That is the first weight of the cross. The old thought, the opinion I defend, the judgment I nurture, the idea I hold simply because it makes me feel important or right or safe. Every mistaken thought becomes a nail, not because someone else imposed it, but because I have carried it myself. And the cross does not punish me. It reveals that I am holding on tightly, because only what I refuse to let go causes me suffering. Each station on this path is a step in the purification of the mind. When Jesus falls, he is not showing physical weakness. He is revealing that the soul stumbles when it still wants to hold on to what it must surrender. When he meets his mother, it is not just an emotional moment. It is the appearance of the memory of purity. When Simon helps him, it teaches that no one is freed alone and that pride must also die. When he consoles the daughters of Jerusalem, it reveals that even in the midst of his own process, Christ thinks of others, not himself. Every act, every step, every scene is not outside. It is happening within you, because you are the one carrying the cross. You are the one who falls. You are the one stripped of your garments, the masks of ego, appearances, titles, defenses. You are the one nailed, not to a wooden beam, but to a repeated thought that no longer serves. And you are also the one who says, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Luke 23:46. And in saying it, something dies in you and something eternal begins to live. The mental way of the cross is not walked once. It is walked every time you decide to think with God. Every time you give up being right. Every time you choose peace over pride. Every time you respond with understanding where you once attacked. Every time you say yes to what your soul already knows, even if your ego rejects it. That is a step. That is a station. And each one brings you closer to a fertile emptiness where Christ can speak, move, be. The cross, then, is no longer a curse. It is a map, a path, the line where the horizontal of the world meets the vertical of the spirit. It is the exact point where your story crosses with eternity. It is not an end, it is a door. And the one who takes it consciously is no longer a victim, because they understand that every nail driven into them frees them from a bondage. It no longer chains them. That is why in this temple you walk through, the way of the cross is not recited, it is lived. And every step leaves behind a false thought, every fall cleanses a memory, and every tear dissolves a mask. Until at last, at the height of the inner Calvary, you are no longer you. You are pure space. And in that space, Christ rises. Chapter 10, the chalice, receiving the divine substance in mind and heart. Communion as a metaphor of integration. The wine as elevated consciousness, the bread as the living word. Every physical temple culminates its greatest rite in a symbolic act. Communion. The bread is offered, the chalice is raised, an ancient formula is spoken. This is my body, this is my blood. Whoever receives it does so in silence, as if something sacred is happening beyond what is visible. But how many have understood the deep meaning of this act? How many know that what is represented outside must be fulfilled inside? Because in the inner temple you walk through, communion is not a ritual, it is integration. It is not a religious ceremony, it is an experience of unity between your mind, your heart, and the living presence of God within you. The bread is not flour, it is the living word that the soul recognizes as its nourishment. It is not an object to be consumed, it is a divine idea to be assimilated. Each time you take a spiritual truth and accept it deeply, not as theory, but as an inner reality, you are communing with the Word. The bread Jesus broke was not just a symbol, it was the representation of his teaching delivered in fullness. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall never hunger. John 6:35. He didn't say whoever worships me, he said whoever comes to me, meaning whoever enters into his consciousness, whoever thinks from where he thinks, whoever lives from the beginning. That is the one who truly feeds. And the wine represents not a liquid substance, but the elevated state of consciousness that flows when mind and heart are in truth. Blood is a symbol of life. It is the ceaseless flow of divine energy. When you accept the Word and allow it to become flesh in you, then the Spirit flows through your mental system like living blood. You no longer think for yourself, you think with God. You no longer react from ego, you respond from presence. And that presence is the true wine. It is the Christ consciousness beginning to circulate through your entire being, nourishing, unifying, elevating. This is the true communion. Not the one taken once a week, not the one distributed from a physical altar, not the one that demands external conditions. It is the communion that occurs the instant you accept without reservation that God dwells in you, that you are a channel, that you are a vessel, that you are the chalice. And by allowing yourself to be filled by the Spirit, everything in you becomes sacred. Not just your thoughts, but your body, your story, your gaze, your words, your walk. Here there is no separation between the spiritual and the human. Here there is no difference between the holy and the everyday. When the chalice is received in consciousness, everything becomes altar. But for this to happen, you must drink. Not just understand, not just contemplate, not just repeat beautiful ideas. You must drink deeply of the truth. You must let it enter you, invade you, transform you, reorder you. You must allow the truth to become your new blood, and that requires surrender. Not mystical surrender, not emotional devotion, but the radical willingness to live from Christ, even if the world does not understand. To receive the chalice is not a symbolic act, it is the decision to renounce inner division. It is to say, by your deeds there is no longer inside and outside, no longer God and me. There is only God being in me. And from there, every day is Mass and every thought is prayer, every action is sacrament. Now understand this, the bread and the wine are one, and you cannot receive words without receiving consciousness. You cannot repeat a truth without allowing it to transform you. You cannot say, I believe, without allowing that belief to dissolve what is not real in you. When you take the bread, you recognize it. This is the living word I accept. When you take the wine, you affirm it. This is the divine consciousness I allow. And when both are in you, there is no longer separation. You have communed, not with an image, not with a memory. You have communed with the living truth. You have become one with Christ. This chamber of the temple requires no witnesses, it only requires your inner yes. And if you give it, you will no longer need to seek external experiences. Your entire life will be experience. Your entire life will be communion. And all who come near you will feel they have been at Mass, even if you have spoken no word at all. Chapter 11. The tabernacle, dwelling in the still center of being, the Holy of Holies in your consciousness. Where the I Am dwells, the place never touched by time. Every true temple holds a secret chamber, a veiled sanctuary reserved for the one not accessible to all. In ancient scriptures, it was called the Holy of Holies. Crowds did not enter there, speeches were not made there, rites for the eyes of men were not performed there. Only one entered, the inner priest, the one purified, the one who understood that crossing this veil was not an external privilege, but a sacred act of consciousness. That place was not of this world. It was the point where eternity touches time without being tainted. The place without shadow, the still center, the core of all being. Today, as you journey through the living temple of your consciousness, you arrive at that point. You do not walk toward it. You settle into it because the tabernacle of the inner temple is not at the end of the path, but deep within your being. You do not enter running, you enter by letting go. You do not access it by thinking, you access it by pausing. You do not discover it by searching, it reveals itself when the soul stops demanding and begins to remember. This place was not created with your body. It was not born with your name. It is not part of your story. It does not age. It does not fall ill. It has no wounds. It was not reached by your traumas nor affected by your mistakes. It is the untouched room of God within you. It was never far, it never ceased to be. It was only covered by the voices, images, emotions, memories, and thoughts you yourself piled between you and it. But now, after having passed through every chamber of the temple, thought, emotion, intention, surrender, you are ready to enter. And you will not enter with noise, nor with ideas, nor with objectives, because this place is not for obtaining, but for being. Here there are no words, no time, no you. There is only I am. The I am is not a name, it is an absolute affirmation of being. It is not the ego saying I exist, but presence saying I am without form, without history, without limit. When you enter the tabernacle and rest there, you do not think of God. You do not pray to God. You do not imagine God. You recognize yourself as one with God. It is the highest experience an incarnate soul can live. Not vision, not ecstasy, not miracle, but certainty without emotion, union without effort, being without attributes. You don't need to move, you don't need to change anything, just remain. In this still center all is fulfilled. No lack of health, no lack of abundance, no lack of love, no lack of purpose, no lack of meaning, because all is contained in the I am, and you are contained in it. When Moses asked the name, the voice did not say, I am your God, and it said, I am who I am. That is not a title, it is a revelation. It is the affirmation of wholeness that does not depend on form or circumstance. It is the root of all existence, and it is within you. The tabernacle is that point. It has no ceiling or floor, no walls or corners. It is the no place within you where God recognizes himself through you. You are not there to do, you are there to be. When you learn to dwell in this center, you no longer move as before. You act but from stillness, you speak but from silence, you walk but without searching, you serve but without expectation. Because you no longer live to find God, you live from him. And when something unsettles you, you don't run, you don't fight, you don't scatter. You return to the tabernacle, a breath, a true thought, a surrender, and everything realigns. You have come here not to lock yourself away, but to remember where all things flow from. You have come so that your outward life is nothing but the reflection of this still center. No one else can enter with you. There is no room for others here, but when you leave, you will carry this presence with you, and whoever sees you, though they may not understand, will feel they have been near the place. Chapter 12. The exit through the courtyard, carrying the truth into the world without saying a word. The transformed soul returning to the world without leaving the temple. The walking church Christ made flesh. Every temple has an entrance, every temple has a center, every temple ultimately has an exit. But the one who has walked through every chamber of the inner temple, not as a tourist but as a disciple, does not leave the same as when they entered. The one who exits through the courtyard is not the one who entered through the door. Because the soul that has seen the light of the altar, that has drunk from the chalice, that has heard Christ, that has rested in the tabernacle, can no longer return to the world as before. And yet, it must return, but now it understands that leaving is not leaving the temple, because now it is the temple. There is no longer inside and outside, no longer sacred and profane, no longer times for prayer and times for work. All is one, all is presence, all is living worship to the God who dwells at the center and expresses in the outside. To exit through the courtyard is not to abandon stillness, it is to extend it. It is to allow the silence to keep sounding as you walk down the street. It is to allow the word to remain alive as you do your tasks. It is to let the chalice spill its contents over every person, every conversation, every encounter. Without effort, without strategy, without display, just being. The church is no longer a place, it is expression. It no longer gathers, it manifests. It needs no columns, no pews, no stained glass, because it is built in pure thought and walks on human feet. You are the church when your life becomes coherence, when your thoughts do not contradict your actions, when your words do not seek approval but are born from silence, when your very presence generates order without imposing, harmony without preaching, and truth without saying a word. This is what Christ came to embody, not an institution but a way of being. Jesus did not found temples, he founded consciousness. He did not create physical altars, he ignited living altars and said, "You are the light of the world." Matthew 5:14. He did not say you should be, he said you already are. You only needed to remember, only needed to enter. And now that you have walked every chamber, you can go out to be. But beware, do not return to the world eager to change it. Do not go out to convince, do not go out to correct. Do not go out to prove what you know. Christ does not need publicity, he needs expression. Go out with new eyes. See people not from judgment but from understanding. Walk among problems not as a victim but as presence. Listen to those who suffer, not to give advice, but to reflect the peace you have found. And when you must speak, do so from the depths. From Christ, not from the mind, from truth, not impulse, and from love, not reaction. And if you do not speak, even better. Because often the greatest transmission is the silence of a soul that no longer doubts who it is. You have exited through the courtyard, not as one who leaves the temple, but as one who carries it with them. You are the church, you are the priest and the altar. You are the way of the cross and the resurrection. You are the lamp that cannot be hidden. You are Christ made flesh, not by imitation, but by manifestation. The temple remains in you. Its structure is now your consciousness, and its liturgy is your life. Its song is your silence, and its mass is your presence. And as you walk, you need not remember every chamber. Just remember this. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And that living requires no explanation, only being. Amen.